Today you're going to hear 3 stories, 3 people, 3 seemingly innocuous decisions, just small choices in the flow of everyday life. But then, like a crack in glass, they spread, shattered, and changed everything. Not just their own lives, millions of lives, and maybe one day, yours. But before we peel back the layers of memory and enter the place where choices become curses, if you're a sucker for the strange, the dark, the mysterious, told as if it were bleeding from the screen itself, then you've come to the right place. Because that's all we do, and we come back every week like a whisper you can't shake. So if you dare, sneak into the like button's house, pour its Mountain Dew down the sink, and replace it with ice-cold pickle juice. Subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications. You'll need it to survive what's coming. Now let's get started. In the shadowed veins of Seoul, where neon lights flicker like dying pulses, the year was 2009. A 38-year-old man slipped into a manga cafe, not seeking warmth, nor caffeine, nor human connection. He came for something colder, something quieter. Escape. He ordered nothing, drank nothing, ate nothing, because he had nothing, no money, no home, no hope, only time, and the gnawing emptiness that clung to him like mold on old walls. He slid into a private cubicle, shut the door behind him, and never came out. He reached for his favorite manga again, a title that almost no one dared to read. Battle Royale. Not just violence, not just blood, but despair, dissected piece by piece, each frame like a slash across flesh. No one understood why he was so absorbed in it. To others it was disgusting, depraved. But to him, it was salvation. Not light, but a bottomless abyss, where silent screams echoed forever. Each page turned like a knife cutting into his mind, slow, steady, but unstoppable. There, pain had order. Death had rules. All horror had a reason. That world was fucked up, but at least it was real. So different from here, where people laughed, pretended to care, then turned away as if they had never seen anyone fall. Each frame was like a whisper. Only the survivors have the right to remember. And he could not forget. Beyond the pages of his novels, his reality was rotting like a corpse left in the sun. His dream of becoming a writer? Drowned in rejection emails, cold as an unread obituary. A director? Now only a faint whisper, echoing from the days when he believed his ideas could save the world. Everything had been peeled away, not in a fire, but in silence, slowly, cruelly, like cancer eating into his spine. His legacy? A mother who lived on painkillers and silence. A grandmother who could no longer distinguish between reality and nightmare. And the red numbers in his bank account, growing louder like the countdown of a bomb. He sold his laptop, the machine that had been his last window into his dream. Now there are only 4 walls, and the sound of the ceiling fan spinning like a dangling noose. The soul is next. Not sold to the devil still negotiates. And this life? It just steals, then laughs. That day in the small coffin-like chamber, something inside him didn't just snap, it slipped forever. He stopped reading. The manga slipped from his hand, falling to the floor like the carcass of an animal long dead. The pen began to tremble in his hand, as if it feared what it was about to write. And then he wrote, not a story, not a novel, but the confession of a rotting soul. Each line wound across the page like blood, a seething ecstasy between manga blood and real-life horror. There were no more borders, no more redemption. The world he painted had no place to suffer. only a place to die, where despair didn't just make people cry, it made them gouge out their eyes, swallow their tongues. There, the weak weren't left behind, they were torn apart first. He didn't write to tell stories. He wrote as if the blood needed to flow somehow, and if not through paper, it would spurt out of his veins. By the time the tavern closes, he is no longer a dreamer who writes stories. He is the lord of a new reality, woven of blood, hunger, and unheard screams. A world where the poor are not just ignored, but forced to tear each other apart to survive another day. Not for justice, not for honor, for a dirty coin, because the losers go hungry and the winners die just a little slower. He no longer imagines a story. He traps the mind. He creates a fever, a poisonous game that consumes the players. From the inside out, there are no winners. There are only those who live long enough to kill a few more. And the worst part, no one is forced to play. They enter, sell themselves, because the outside is worse. He drew out every fragment of memory, every old wound, every nightmare buried in the depths of his subconscious to feed that story. It was no longer writing. It was bleeding onto paper. The story was too violent, as if it wanted to bite back at the reader, too strange, as if copied from the dream of a madman. He sent it, repeated it like a desperate ritual, but each reply was just cold, formulaic lines. No one wants this. No one wants the truth. No one wants to see the abyss beneath society's smiles. He wouldn't let go. He couldn't. The script was more than a work. It was the last vestige of a dying dream. 10 years. 10 silent winters. 10 moldy summers. 10 years living with a child that was never born. Friends disappeared like mist. Mother stopped calling. Grandmother was just wheezing under the yellowed blanket. And him. He began to hear the script breathing at night, a dry breath like the one he heard in his chest. Then, after 10 years of darkness, the phone rang. A strange sound, damp, cold as metal against bone. A studio answered. We want it. Not just the script. They wanted the entire world he had created in loneliness, poverty, and ruin. They didn't ask if he was okay. Didn't ask why each page was so bloody. In 2021, it appeared on the screen. It was no longer a story. It was a summoning ritual. Everything that followed wasn't success. It was madness. Viewers couldn't sleep. Some didn't dare leave their homes. Some didn't dare live on. Facebook sprung up like mushrooms. Forums were filled with theories, analysis, cries, worship. People didn't watch. People sacrificed to it. And amidst the storm of praise, awards, money, he just sat quietly in the dark and whispered, "It wasn't me who wrote it. It wrote me." The movie Squid Game was released. Not released. Not premiered. Released. Like a creature locked in the dark for too long. In a matter of hours, it consumed the internet. Memes grew like mushrooms. Red masks appeared everywhere on children, on adults, on criminals. Theories flourished. Analysis abounded. And lurking in it all was fear. But not fear of the movie. Fear of liking it too much. The world was glued to its screens, watching poor people die for money. Not for honor, not for ideals, just for survival and entertainment. Applause echoed through the living room. People laughed when a guy broke his neck. People cheered when a child was betrayed. People played the game in real life with friends, with family. And no one stopped to ask, what did we just see? The writer Hwang Dong-hyuk was hailed as a genius, holding an Emmy, smiling brightly on stage. He stood on top of the world. The spotlight was on him. Millions of people were calling his name, but deep inside his chest, something stopped beating. He knew the truth, a cold, stone-heavy truth in his gut. He didn't create this nightmare. He just cut it from reality and painted it over with blood. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't fiction. It was just a mirror, and the world was too eager to look into it. He didn't write a nightmare. He recorded it. Every detail, every wound, every death was already there out there. And the audience? They weren't afraid. They loved it. They wanted more. They wanted more. And from now on, whenever you hear the red light, green light melody softly playing in a commercial, a comedy video, or amid a crowd of laughing people, stop and listen closely. Not the music. It's the gasps of those who have been running not for the game, but for life with a gun to the back of their necks. How far will you go? How much dignity are you willing to give up? Who will you trample on to continue to survive? Because in a world where despair is the rule and the poor are entertainment, horror doesn't need gore or monsters. It just needs an audience, someone willing to watch without feeling anything. In the sweltering heat of the summer of 1953, a man named Sam Phillips sat alone in his Memphis recording studio. He was 30 years old, ambitious, driven, and always hunting for raw talent. His studio, Sun Records, was nothing fancy, but it was open to anyone who had $4 and a song to sing. But on one particular afternoon, someone or something came in that would change music history forever. That afternoon, Sam had just finished recording a local gospel choir. The voices of angels had barely faded from the booth. Dust still hung in the rays of golden sunlight, streaking through the blinds. He wiped the sweat from his brow and reset the equipment. The space fell silentirely silent. He didn't know who would come next. That was part of the thrill. But what walked through the door wasn't what he expected. A young man walked in, maybe 18, a guitar slung over his shoulder. His eyes were sunken like he hadn't slept in days. His skin pale, almost too pale. He didn't say much, just that he drove trucks and wanted to record a song for his mother. Sam smiled and told him, $4 and the booth is yours. The boy didn't blink. He handed Sam the money with fingers that looked wrong, too long, too thin, almost skeletal. He stepped into the booth, shut the door, and everything changed. The moment he started to sing, Sam felt the air shift. This wasn't a voice, it was a haunting. The boy's face, previously shy and void of expression, transformed. In the glass reflection of the booth, Sam swore he had no face, just a smooth skin-colored void where eyes and mouth should have been. But the voice kept coming, deep, mournful, not entirely human. When it was over, the boy took his recording and quietly left. Sam sat frozen in his chair. The reel-to-reel tape spun in silence. He scribbled a note on the tape box. Good ballad singer, save. He didn't know why he wrote it. It felt more like a command than a memory. Something inside him whispered, don't forget him. But Sam couldn't remember the boy's face because he never saw it. A year passed. In 1954, a band came in to record, but something was missing, a voice. Sam's assistant remembered the strange boy and suggested calling him back. Sam hesitated. That memory still gnawed at the back of his mind, but curiosity won. The boy returned, still pale, still quiet, still faceless in Sam's dreams. They began to play together, but the music was wrong. discordant like instruments were fighting against each other. Sam called a break, stepping away to clear his head. Suddenly, music erupted from the booth. Sam rushed in, heart pounding. What he saw defied explanation. The boy was possessed, leaping, screaming, howling with inhuman energy. The band, entranced, played along. Their eyes glazed, blood trickled from the drummer's nose. The lights flickered violently, as if reality itself couldn't contain the sound. Sam felt cold. He knew he was watching something new being born, something dangerous. Not music, not a performance, a summoning. That night they recorded a single. They called it "That's All Right." It wasn't. Once it hit the radio, the faceless boy vanished. But his voice spread. People became obsessed. They said the music spoke to their soul. Others said it made them see things, hear whispers, dream of a man with no face. His name was never spoken on the record sleeve, only the song title. Decades passed. The legend of the faceless singer grew. Some say he lives on in the voice of every hit record. Some say if you play that original tape backward, you'll hear your own name whispered by a voice that doesn't exist. Sam never spoke about it again, but the booth remains. And sometimes late at night people say you can still hear him sing. March 31, 2012. Ottawa, moonless. The dim lights of the convention center cast pale, wavering shadows, like a spirit without a home. In the corner of the stage, a man stood still, as alone as a stone statue. His breathing quickened. His heart beat like a drum. The screams echoed not cheers but something wild, primal, like the cries of animals before a sacrifice. Thousands of people watched in the stands behind the screens. But he saw no one. He saw only emptiness, vast, full of eyes without whites. He did not tremble, but not because of courage, but because he had overcome the threshold of fear. There was no one. Inside him, only the screams. His name was Justin, skinny, hollow-eyed, with a look of lost hope, as if someone had just dropped him off to die without warning. His entire frame was a nerve stretched to breaking point, quivering under the bright lights and the cold hiss of the morgue air. Across the ring, standing erect like a war machine polished in blood, was Brass Knuckles Brazil, a name that made the air sink. He was no fighter. He was a disciplined killer, a soldier with a black belt and the hollow eyes of a man who had seen too much death and was getting addicted. The stands roared, but not with excitement. They were hungry. They wanted blood. And they knew Justin would shatter like a child's toy thrown into a tank's tires. Justin's dream, the one small light in his life, now stood on a knife's edge, trembling before the verdict of a muscular nightmare. This was no longer a fight. This was a sacrifice. The commentators snorted, their voices dripping with contempt. "He's like a freshly polished pony, ready to be butchered," one said, half joking, half vicious. The audience roared with delight. The laughter spread like a plague through a morgue. All eyes turned on Justin like blunt knives, laughing but still, ready to rip his dignity apart. He didn't respond, just stood there, silent like a ghost emerging from a dungeon. No one knew that for months he'd been practicing strangling himself with an old rope, learning to wrestle with death. Every night he'd punch the wall until his blood mixed with lime chips. Every bruise wasn't an accident, it was intentional, forging his bones, calling pain by its name. The name Shiny Panathe thought it was weakness, but in fact it is the thin skin of an animal that has died once and comes back to bite. The bell rang like a call from the abyss. Justin charged not with strategy, but with the last instinct of a cornered creature. Brass Knuckles spun his movements, cold, precise as an ancient guillotine. He didn't block. He tore it apart a hook, an elbow, a knee. The sound of flesh hitting bone was like a drum of human skin. Justin staggered, his eyes lost, blood pouring from his mouth like a statue of death. The floor was sticky with sweat and blood, slippery as a shroud. Each blow didn't just break the body. It ripped out memories, cold, hungry nights, taunts, times he thought he should die and survived. And when his legs buckled, trembling as if ready to collapse, he didn't fall, because Justin was no longer fighting to win. He fought to survive among the bloodthirsty crowd like wild dogs. The bell rang like a temporary reprieve from the grim reaper. Justin staggered back to the corner, not walking but dragging like a ghost, not yet buried. His face was torn. His left eye was blurred. Each step was a warning from his body. Stop or die. The nurse pressed a cold towel to the wound, but it could not absorb the despair seeping from within. The trainer shouted in his ear like a soul summoning a dying man. But everything was just a buzz in his head, muffled by the thundering of his heart, pumping with adrenaline and fear. The audience roared like bloodthirsty beasts. They did not cheer. They waited to see him fall. In that dark pit, only one thought of survival rose like a last gasp. I can't let them bury me here. Not today. The bell rang again, but this time it was no longer a summons to slaughter. It was a death knell. Justin did not step forward. He crawled out like a ghost, his eyes no longer fearful, only empty. The first fist slammed into Brass Knuckles' face. There was a crack, bone or illusion. I couldn't tell. The second sent blood spattering the ropes like spray paint on a white sheet. The third sent the soldier sprawling. One knee hit the floor. He had never knelt before anyone, until now. The crowd roared, not with joy, because they had seen a man fall not by strength, but by contempt. Shiny Pony had died in the first round. What remained was fury in human skin. The round ended with a bell that rang like a death knell. Brass Knuckles staggered, his breathing ragged like a wounded animal. His face was white, no longer the undefeated warrior, only a walking corpse, shocked, drained of life. Blood dripped from his temple to the floor, joining Justin's old blood. And Justin, raging eyes, swollen lips split, stood there like a ghost come back to life. There was a strange fire in his gaze, not victory but pure existence, primal and cold. Their eyes met. On one side was collapse, on the other rise from the abyss. In that moment the line between man and monster blurred. This deadly dance was no longer a fight. It was purgation, and the knife in the scales of fate had changed hands. The final bell rang not as a conclusion, but as the opening of a nightmare. Justin did not charge in like a fighter. He was possessed. Each punch was a release of years of accumulated anger, a bloody indictment of the world that had mocked him. Brass Knuckles could no longer take it. He staggered, his eyes wild. Then the final blow, merciless, without hesitation, came down like a sledgehammer. His nose was shattered, and blood spurted like a fountain, dark red, sticky, and sprayed onto Justin's face like the remains of a ritual. The crowd roared, not with excitement but with terror. The referee rushed in a beat, too late, and pulled Justin away from the twitching body. Justin did not withdraw his hand immediately. His eyes were lifeless, as if he had gone too far to turn back. On the floor, Brass Knuckles lay motionless, blood pooling beneath his head. And amid the hysterical roars, a chill ran through the room. They hadn't just watched a fight. They'd just seen a man torn apart. Justin stood alone in the ring, blood dripping onto the floor, winning by TKO. But no one applauded immediately. Not because they didn't acknowledge it, but because they were afraid. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't smile. He just stood there, breathing heavily, staring into space, as if he were still fighting something unseen. Brass knuckles twitched in the corner, his face crumbling like a crushed clay mask. The nurse rushed in. The audience fell silent. The cheers erupted, but not because they were happy. They needed the noise to cover up the feeling that they were witnessing something wrong. Justin was no longer a laughing stock. He was a living testament to the violence to which humans can go when they have nothing left to lose. And in that moment, they didn't see a victor, they saw a soul that had left its humanity behind every punch. The fight was a charity event, a stage set up to make people laugh, to sell tickets, to see a skinny guy crushed publicly. Brass Knuckles was no professional, just a fighting machine, accustomed to the smell of blood. Justin was no boxer either, just a name that trembled amid mocking laughter. But what no one could have predicted was that on that night, something died. Not a person, but fear. Under the cold white lights of a morgue, amid the roars of a bloodthirsty crowd, Justin transformed. Not through technique, not through experience, through sheer resignation and a lifetime of pent-up anger. He didn't win because he was stronger. He won because he had nothing left to lose. The final punch didn't just break his opponent's nose. It shattered the frame of the world he had built around him. From the ashes of farce, a symbol was born, not from victory, but from despair forged into metal. That night did not end when the lights went out. It silently haunted those who witnessed it forever. From pariah to national icon, Justin's victory not only rewrote history, but ripped away the thin mask of glory. He didn't walk out of the ring, he crawled out, staggering like a soul, escaping hell, bruised, bloody, but not broken. There was no victory in his eyes, only emptiness. The emptiness of a man who had given up so much to survive. The man once called the Shining Horse was now hailed as a symbol of will, but behind that monument, the silent scream of a man who had to break himself to be recognized. The fight was over. The legend began. And inside Justin, something would never heal.